I believe that aging is a disease. I believe it is treatable. I believe we can treat it within our lifetimes. David Sinclair, PhD, Harvard geneticist, author of Lifespan.
We're going to have a practical discussion today. To begin, I'd like to address two of the most frequently mentioned terms in longevity videos and literature: genes and stress. Let's start with stress. I often hear that in order to live long, you need to live a very calm and measured life. Avoid stress, avoid excitement, meditate. In other words, avoid stress and forget about life. Well, first of all, it sounds incredibly boring, and second, it's simply impossible. If we look at the real lives of centenarians, and there is a science that studies aging, it's called gerontology, we'll see that many of them experience considerable stress and major life challenges. And there is no common successful lifestyle that will lead you to longevity. But there are certain patterns and common traits that almost all long livers share. And we'll talk about those later in this video. Now on to genes. Perhaps the most beloved and frequently cited terms in discussions about longevity. But as Eric Topol, a famous cardiologist and a champion of elderly, said, genes are not as important as we thought. Personally, I like those paradoxical comments from people who neglect their health and carry extra weight upon seeing someone who is their age but looks much younger and is much healthier than they are, and they can say, oh, it's all genetics. It's far too easy to blame fixed things, genes, fate, the universe, or the stars for our situation. This reminds me of one documentary that I once saw. It was about Maya Plisetskaya, a legendary Russian ballerina. She passed away in 2015 at the age of 89, and I watched it with my mother and aunt. At that time, she was still alive, and she was somewhere around 85, and she looked stunning, exceptional shape. She was very slim, she had a graceful posture, and she was radiantly beautiful. When the documentary mentioned her remarkable appearance, my mother and aunt, whom I actually adore, but they both carry a little bit of extra weight, they immediately commented that, oh, that's all because she never had kids. I was a child at that time myself, but even I thought that it does sound like a very shaky explanation. The truth is, Maya Plisetskaya was deeply dedicated to her art. She danced, she went on stage, she did sports, and she took great care of herself right up to the end. For some people, it just seems easier to come up with an excuse than to acknowledge someone else's discipline and hard work. And motherhood, of course, is such a sacred excuse that nobody dares argue with it. Well, not if they want to survive the conversation. But the reality is this: living a long and healthy life in a strong, beautiful body takes work. It's not about luck. We have to take responsibility for our health. It's not something we can leave to just genes or fate or cosmic randomness. And the truth is, we have much more influence than we often believe. And today I'm going to show you what we can do. As for myself, I'm not a doctor or a biologist. I'm just a regular person, but I'm more into the introvert mind, and when I get interested in something, I usually tend to dig really deep. I've been studying the science of longevity and following the research for about 15 years now. So the things that I'm going to tell you today are not just random facts that I gathered to get ready for this video. I try to stay objective and rely on real science, not just on rumors or hype. So here are the key insights. The first and the most important factor that influences longevity, and you might be surprised to hear it, it is medicine. Statistics and modern research shows that people in large metropolitan areas with access to a high-quality medicine tend to have the longest life expectancy. This factor outweighs everything else. And it's thanks to medicine and pharmacology we are now living longer lives, even though some people criticize this sphere for being overly commercialized and sometimes even conspirational. And there is some truth in it, and I think I will make a separate video about this. But at the same time, commercial success, perspective and public hype are driving the industry forward. It gives a fuel to new research. There is a common belief that our health is heavily dependent on environment. And yes, it does in some way, but not as much as people think. Medicine outweighs everything, as I already said. Take Hong Kong, for example, one of the most polluted cities in the world, if not the most polluted. But they also have one of the most advanced healthcare systems. And they also have one of the highest life expectancies globally. Medicine today has reached such a level where it can deal with bad genetics and almost any major health issue. Even if you yourself do not take care of yourself. Usually if something is detected early, now almost everything can be treated. And that's why regular checkups are important. Kandi Tanaka, one of the world's oldest people, had cancer diagnosed at the age of 45, and it was successfully treated. And later she had another type of cancer, believe it or not, at the age of 103. And it was also successfully treated. She recovered well both times and went on to live in good shape until the age of 119. If you live in a country with good healthcare, and nowadays it's almost all developed countries, you are in a good place. I live in United States, and in global ratings, United States healthcare is usually placed somewhere behind, but that's mostly due to clunky and cumbersome insurance system. Raise your hand if you are aware of this issue. But the actual level of medical care, the qualifications of doctors, the equipment and the access to medications is very high. So if you live in a country with good health care, make it a habit to go for regular checkups, and there's no need to exaggerate and do too much screening. Usually just regular exams and blood test is enough. And if something happens, and if you get a serious diagnosis, or you feel that something is not quite right, please get a second opinion, or even a third or a fourth. Do not hesitate. Your life is the most valuable thing you will ever have. In certain situations, it's better to be overly cautious than careless. Average life expectancy is growing every year. Sooner or later, that trend might stop. But many scientists believe that we haven't yet reached our limit. Even though most known centenarians lived to around 110, we've seen that since the middle of 19th century, those lives are getting longer too. The current theoretical ceiling is now about 120 years. Of course, we care not only about how long we live, but how well. We want to preserve the functions and capabilities of young bodies as long as possible. Nobody is interested in living a long life but being frail and sick. So, when we talk about extending life, we usually mean extending the healthy longevity, and that is also on the rise nowadays. I won't go too deep into detail now about the causes of aging and the diseases that come with it. We all know about high blood pressure, cardiovascular problems, type 2 diabetes, osteoporosis, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and certain types of cancer. These are the most typical conditions in older adults. The fact that they appear so predictably shows us that they share common causes, and scientists today have identified many of them. We know that aging begins at the cellular level, with DNA damage, misfolded proteins, mitochondrial breakdown, and chronic inflammation, all feeding into one another and accelerating decline. I won't go too deep into the mechanisms, they all point to the same thing. Aging is the gradual failure of internal maintenance system. So, why do these processes occur more frequently with age? Scientists don't have a definitive answer yet, and even back in the 90s, gerontologists counted over 300 possible hypotheses, and that number has only grown since then. Experiments on mice and worms are already giving good results. I know that by combining different methods, scientists have already managed to extend worms' lifespan by 6 times. But the reality is that there is still no definitive treatment or drug that was tested and proven to work on humans. Many scientists now believe that we need to maintain our bodies in good shape until the next significant breakthrough comes, and it will significantly extend our lives, and it will be sad if you will meet this breakthrough in an already old and sick body. But while the process of aging now is still inevitable, science has ways to slow it down. We already discussed medicine, but there are things that we can do ourselves. And first and the most effective one is physical exercise, especially strength training and high-intensity exercise. Any physical activity is helpful, but recent studies show that strength and high-intensity workouts have most significant results. We still don't clearly understand the process of how it works, but the results are clear. One hypothesis is that exercise acts as a form of mild stress, what's sometimes called positive stress. It forces the body to adapt, strengthening the immune system and improving its ability to detect and destroy abnormal and potentially cancerous cells. Another mechanism involves changes in hormone levels. Exercise can influence the hormonal profile in a way that helps prevent hormone-driven cancers, like, for example, breast cancer. There is also a hypothesis that exercise reduces insulin resistance, which in turn lowers chronic inflammation, another major driver of cancer. In 2022, Nature magazine published a research showing that just 3 minutes of high-intensity workouts per day can halve your risk of death of any causes. 3 short bursts of 1 or 2 minutes each, just that, reduced overall cancer mortality by 39% and cardiovascular mortality by 49%. To track this, researchers used accelerometers on over 25,000 participants. This is important because older studies mostly relied on questionnaires, which missed short bursts of intense movement, like running up the escalator or chasing a bus, for example. Longer workouts bring even more benefits, but not in a strictly proportional way. So if you want maximum effect, exercise more. You can aim to 75 to 150 minutes of high-intensity workouts per week. Of course, extreme overexertion is harmful, But within reason, exercise makes you fit, energetic, and self-confident. You'll look younger and more toned. Exercise and well-trained muscles give your movements lightness and graceful fluidity. They also improve your posture. You can see this difference even in young people, and the older you get, the more noticeable this difference becomes. Personally, I do strength training 3 times a week, about 25-30 minutes each, not longer. Also, every morning I do a 10-minute morning exercise. I also try to go for a walk or a swim or kayaking, or I also use elliptical. I used to run, but I realized that I just hate running. Everything else I can do with joy. Usually I can listen to an audiobook or a podcast, and on the elliptical I even sometimes watch movies. Cold exposure is another strategy that might help slow down aging. Like strength training, it's thought to train body's stress response system. The idea is that mild and controlled stress, whether through exercise or through cold, triggers the release of free radicals, which are considered one of the main causes of aging. This brief burst of reactive oxygen species does damage cells slightly, but at the same time, it activates adaptation mechanisms that help the body handle stronger future stresses. However, there are no official protocols or standards of this kind of stress training yet, but it's a promising area. Nutrition. Nutrition, of course, also plays a big role. Scientists are now still studying how such factors like diet can influence longevity, and there is good reason to believe that they can significantly boost our ability to live longer. But at the same time, one recent big study found that even strict adherence to a healthy diet, like for example a Mediterranean diet that is considered one of the most healthy, increased life expectancy by about 10-20% compared to people who did not follow any healthy diet at all. That's less than scientists and many of us would expect, but 10-20% is still something. So there's clearly a lot left to learn here, which also means that there is a lot of potential for discovery. One thing that we know for sure has a very strong impact on your health is fiber. Its presence in your daily diet is critical. Most modern diets are severely lacking fiber, and that's a major factor behind the rise in chronic inflammatory diseases nowadays. This deserves a separate video. Studying the microbiome is one of the most promising areas of science nowadays, including the field of healthy longevity. Whole grains, seeds, berries, fruits and vegetables are all good sources of fiber. Personally, I also use fiber supplements. I use finely grounded whole grains and seeds. I mix them with water or yogurt and eat them as an addition to my everyday diet. And it's actually food. It's not just a supplement. It's just grounded seeds and whole grains. One of good benefits of eating fiber like I do is that they really fill you up and you don't want to eat after that, and it helps you to maintain your weight. Alcohol. Opinions vary. Most studies show that light to moderate drinking does not really influence your life expectancy. Excessive drinking, of course, is very harmful, one of the most harmful things. Smoking and excessive drinking. But there is one aspect of alcohol that usually goes overlooked, and it can have a seriously negative impact. It's drinking at night. Even a small amount of alcohol in the evening before you go to sleep disrupts your sleep cycles and robs you of deep sleep. You might have noticed it yourself. People who have a habit of having a drink before they go to sleep are actually depriving themselves of one of the body's most powerful tools for recovery. So, if you do drink, try to do it in the middle of the day. It makes a work process more fun, but it won't interfere with your sleep rhythms. Caloric restriction. Let's talk about that. As we've just discussed, many aging-related issues are connected to how we generate energy and synthesize new molecules. A calorie restriction can force the body to tap into its own resources. That triggers the destruction of dysfunctional cells, those same ones that interfere with normal tissue function and provoke inflammation. In mice, cutting calorie intake by 55-65% extended their lifespan by 35-65%. But we still do not know exactly how it works in humans or what the optimum calorie reduction would be. Personally, I got interested in the experiment on worms, where they lived twice as long with dietary changes. It was actually a gene experiment, but I know that a slight calorie deficit is proven to increase lifespan, yet we rarely see that in public health recommendations, simply because it's too difficult for most people to implement. But I decided to stick to it, and you'd be surprised how little a person needs to eat. I'm a relatively small person, and my daily food intake may seem ridiculously small to somebody else. And yet I eat deliciously, and I really enjoy food. And I don't force myself into any strict diets. I simply practice mindful eating with a slight calorie deficit. I managed to do this because apart from tasty food, I absolutely love beautiful clothes. I adore shopping and trying on new things, and that sweet feeling when you like the way things look on you outweighs the urge to overeat. Again, I'm not torturing myself, I just know where the line is between normal eating and overeating, and I try not to cross it. And if I do, for example, celebrations, I do not limit myself. I try to balance it out the next day. But anyway, again, exercise has a more significant effect. And in fact, intense physical activity can almost completely offset the harm of occasional unhealthy eating. And now a quick word about Ozempic. I haven't explored it in detail because I do not plan to use it. As you can see, I have found my own motivation. But from what I've read, many reputable independent scientists believe that this drug will be a significant part of our healthy future. Yes, it has side effects. And yes, it must be taken under medical control. And yes, it's likely a lifelong medication. But it really seems to work. Negative effects of obesity are worse than Ozempic's side effects. So if you truly suffer from overeating and medical obesity, I am not recommending you anything now. I'm not a doctor, but I do suggest you reading up on it and asking your physician. As far as I understood, now scientists believe that in future most people will take medications like Ozempic, simply because humanity was not built to that amount of calories we have around us. We evolved for scarcity. So do not be too hard on yourself. Just ask your doctor about this. Sleep. I won't dwell on it here because I don't want to make this video too long, but it doesn't mean that sleep is less important. Without regular quality sleep, your immune system just can't function properly. Sleep is when the body checks that all systems are working properly and performs a full reset. From what I've read in most recent studies, your exact circadian rhythm does not matter that much. The main thing is that you get enough of sleep. So sleep well. It's critical.
For in dreams we enter a world that's entirely our own. Let them swim in the deepest ocean or glide over the highest cloud.
So what do today's centenarians around the world have in common? I'm not just talking about those in the so-called blue zones. I mean long livers from all developed countries, because today they are everywhere. In fact, in the US, the number of people over 100 is growing faster than any other age group. Two key things unite them. First, they do not have chronic diseases or delay them significantly. And that's something within your control. We just discussed it. Even if those conditions are inevitable, you can delay them significantly. Let them happen not in 70. Let them happen after 100. And second, they all have interests and passions in life. Yes, community, family, and support from loved ones are important. But research on many European centenarians has shown that hobbies, ongoing careers, dreams, and plans for future accomplishments are more important. These people are deeply engaged in what they do. They make long-term plans. Many of them are engaged in science or other mentally stimulating work. They travel, explore the world, and keep learning. They don't just live out their days watching their grandchildren from the sidelines. They are active participants in life. Longevity isn't about luck, it's about what you do. To make this a conversation, share your thoughts and comments below. What do you agree or disagree with? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Tiny click for you and a big deal for me.
Hypothesis.
Hypothesis.